Hello and welcome to John and James Live. And today we have special guest Gemma Herbertson, entrepreneur, inventor, and founder of Neuro Frontiers. How are you today, Gemma?
Very good. Yes, enjoying a lovely week of sunshine here. I'm in Salisbury in the UK.
It's beautiful out there, isn't it?
Mm.
Amazing. You're Southampton way, James, aren't you? You guys have got the countryside. I've got a bit of Greenwich Park on my doorstep, but it's so
we've got it good down here.
Sunshine.
I'm right near a forest. I saw a huge a stag this morning with his antlers and everything. I go for a bike ride every morning, so I saw that this morning. It was fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
We get the odd deer, but we don't get the stag. That's impressive, Gemma. Wow.
I hardly ever see that. You see deer, I get them in the garden even, but not a stag. So yeah, lovely.
You ride your horse in the morning, don't you, James?
I clearly, yes.
Normally.
The equestrian that I am. It says you'll get used to his humour. It is weird. It's an acquired taste.
So Gemma, I appreciate you coming on, Gemma. To be honest, I don't know much about neuroplasticity. So I've read a book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Dispenza. I think it was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and he was talking about neuroplasticity and how to change your brain. So we'll start off with talking about your journey, Gemma, because it all started when your son was it a brain injury?
No, a brain tumor. So he most likely had that from birth, but it wasn't diagnosed until he was about 4. Prior to that, he was having 500 seizures a week, and so his development was really, really battered by that. So, and then after his brain surgery, he had for the layperson, a quarter of his brain removed. For anyone who knows, he had his left temporal lobe taken out. And then he was 4 years old, but he had a mental age much younger, like a baby, really. So after surgery, they monitor you. And so we had him every so often. They see, is he making any progress? I mean, his seizures reduced to about 6 a month. So that was in some way good. But he remained pretty much, not great. Every sort of 3 months or so, we were monitoring his progress. So he was without speech, doubly incontinent. He still had his seizures. He had an eye that turned out, and then he was spent most of his time in a wheelchair. So it wasn't a very perfect picture at all. Better life than we'd had prior to that point. So I asked the hospital, when we were released from hospital after his operation, what should we do now? And this is all they said: fingers crossed. Some people get better, some don't. Just go home and sort of do your best, or get on with life, really. So after a few months of feeling that things were maybe plateauing a bit, and not seeing the dream, I suppose in my head the dream had been, oh wow, he'll have this operation, he'll be like a normal 4-year-old. But obviously that was a huge leap of faith and not really possible. So then I started looking online. I mean, the internet is a wonderful thing, so I'm very grateful to it, and found that just across the water from the UK, in Denmark, they can do things slightly differently, and there was therapies being used there. So much more thinking about neuro rehabilitation, or stimulating the brain in some good ways to help it develop and to restore function where you had it before, or to encourage function where there hadn't been any before. So I don't speak Danish, unfortunately, so I couldn't go directly over there, but I found that somewhere in Philadelphia was training people on similar therapies, and then that began my journey. So I learnt quite a bit from going on some courses there, and then I started building my knowledge base and being able, my practical skills. That was the most important thing, having these practical skills for me to be using with my son. And then by I think 6 or 9 months later, I think it must have been 9 months. So we'd had our checkup with the clinical psychologist in the hospital. And later on, he told me that when he greeted us and my son got out of his wheelchair and walked up the stairs, started saying words, and I had flashcards at that point because he couldn't generate normal conversation, but I could get him to speak from flashcards, that he could just read them back again. And then we were doing some basic maths. He said he literally had to just sit down in his chair because he couldn't believe the difference in such a short period of time. After that, I got a call from my son's neurosurgeon saying, could I come in? It was from his secretary, actually. She said, could I come in and have a meeting with him, but don't bring your son? And I said, what's this about? She said, I don't know. But she said, but I can tell you, I've never had to ask a parent to do this before. So then I went in, and there was him, the neurosurgeon and the psychologist were sat there, and in summary, they said, what the hell have you been doing? So, because, it's a better outcome for my son, because his progress had really accelerated, and, maybe that's not what they were expecting. And then I was totally thrilled that my hard work had really made a difference. It's when you hear it from somebody professionally, do you realize that, your efforts, that they didn't just happen by coincidence. It really was that you were doing something which made a difference, which somebody with their professional hat on could appreciate. So I continued to do what I was doing with my son. The neurosurgeon said that he'd got some funding from the Ronald McDonald Foundation to try and set something up along the same lines as what I was doing with my son, which I was really, really thrilled about. But he also shared that these things take at least 10 years to go through NICE guidelines. So that would, I didn't want to wait that long to help my son through the NHS. So I'm so happy to have found all these therapies. I continued training, and I continued learning even more things from that point, and to add new skills, to learn new things. So then eventually it came to a point where my son was going to school. I'd got it. We use something called an EHCP over here, which is a contract that you have with the local authority of what they will deliver to your child. So I had one of those, and I got his therapies delivered in a school setting, which was absolutely amazing for me, because that meant I was released then from being my son's therapist, and I could go back to being his mum. And I think that's so any parent would want to do that. And lots of parents out there. I mean, I've met some incredible parents now. I work with these therapies as my profession, and I see them, and they work so hard, and they're so committed, and a lot of them take their children out of school to be able to implement these therapies. And it's so nice if you can find a way to being a parent again. You want to go back to being that parent, or because that's the fun part of and the best part of being a parent and having a child, and rather than being the ogre that says, right, come on, we've got to do the therapies again, 2 hours. If someone else can do that with your child, and your child can go into a school setting, I think we know years of wisdom teach us that children are very awake between 9 and 3. Hey, that's when school happens. So if you can get someone to implement the therapies during that time, that's when you're going to get most out of your child, and it'd be easy for them to do this. So the school setting is ideal to do these sorts of things. So my son has progressed enormously. So he no longer has an eye that was turned out. He was due to have an operation for that, but because the problem wasn't his eye, it was the way it was processed at the back here in your brain. So his eye is nice and straight. He walks, runs, talks, climbs trees, dances. It does everything. He's very helpful around the home and in the garden. He is continent. He's just, and as he's grown older, he's found his sort of talents. He loves the nature. He loves being outdoors, but he also is very talented at art, and he's been put into some competitions by his school now, because he has an amazing ability where he can take a photograph, he calls it, in his brain, and then of trees is his thing, and then he'll come home and he'll cut a silhouette of that tree out of paper or cardboard, or he'll draw a picture. But the silhouettes are the most amazing things, because it's just I don't know how he does it. It's amazing. Wow. Even if I just wanted to cut a tree, I know I wouldn't get the proportions right. It just has sometimes enormous pieces of cardboard and is able to do it. So yeah, I'm thrilled. So that was my journey with and it's still my ongoing journey with my son, but I'm very lucky that his school implement the therapies they continue, because his injuries are so severe, if you like. Missing a quarter of a brain is quite severe. So some things are still implemented. It's not as intense probably as we did in the early days, but he still gets lots out of it, and it's a way to continue to support his brain and help him to be his best as time goes on. So that's my son.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's incredible.
Well, I think there's so much, I think, to respond to that. I mean, first and foremost, as a parent, it's like having to go through that with your child at such an early age. I can't imagine, Gemma. I just, I guess you just go into sort of coping mode. But
honestly, it was horrendous.
So can you kind of talk a little bit about that in terms of those early sort of days of the diagnosis, and how that must have felt going through that?
Yeah, it's really hard even just thinking about it now. I feel like crying because I've seen initially when my son was having seizures. Oh dear. We were in the hospital and I saw him die a number of times. Well, they thought he died because we didn't know they were seizures, because he would just turn blue and stop breathing, and then his heart would go funny, and then they would react as if he was dying or needing resuscitation. So and that hundreds of times I saw that. We lived in the hospital for about 3 months, and then when we finally got a diagnosis even of epilepsy at that point, I then spent 2 years, of nearly 4 years, of only getting about 2 to 3 hours of broken sleep a day. So I'd get them in 20-minute chunks, because every 2 hours he was roughly having a seizure. So it's just, you can't imagine. You're just I think lots of parents and carers who have to live this sort of life, when you think about spies and things and how they might have to put up with some sort of torture with sleep deprivation, you think, no, we would all make excellent spies, because this is, it puts you on a par with them. It's really very traumatic, and not a way that you would enjoy living your life at all. But it's certainly a great motivator to try and do something about it, because prior to having anything to help you to change that situation, you feel so powerless. You're absolutely powerless to you just don't know, and you really want some answers, and you turn to the traditional sources of answers, the NHS, and if it's somebody in at school age in education, or if it's out of school age, people, no matter where they are on the spectrum of some sort of brain issue, they might turn to their self-help shelf, or they turn to a therapist. And then once you've run out of answers from these, health, education, traditional or conventional therapists, you then like, wow, I need to look for something else, because you just want that sense of control back, something away, rather than just standing back, watching it happen. It's quite traumatic.
The LinkedIn user, I don't know who it is, because I can't see it on here, but Gemma serving science from the heart, and not any heart, the motherhood, unconditional loving heart. On the
that's so nice, thank you.
So Gemma, in terms of the early days, was it something genetic that you knew was going to be an issue at a later date, or you didn't know anything until 4 years old? Was that how it went?
No, we don't know. I did have a traumatic birth with him, so maybe that was an influencing factor, but we don't know. It's not genetic. It's not believed to be genetic. It was a brain tumor, and he still has a portion of it left. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Does that part of the brain do, that quarter? In
That's
terms
your
of the
left
one that
temporal
was,
lobe.
yeah. What's the function of that?
Lots and lots of functions. So quite a lot of them allied to some sort of logic. So you're hearing of sound. So you've got some sound processing going on there, and you're hearing. It's literally so the interpretation of sound is on the other side. So you're a lot of it. So you're hearing pure sound coming in from that side, or like a word, but then the interpretation of how you might speak that word or of that sentence. So I might say, "Oh, that's anger." But if you don't, but anger is, and then I can tell you things he struggles with, because what's interesting is, so neuroplasticity therapies is what I deal in, and this is very much to do with brain function. So in terms of how we discovered brain function in the early days, and even to some extent now, is by looking at what a person was like before, and then they had an injury. When you figure out where that injury was, what's missing, so then we know that area is associated with that function. So for my son, he struggled with mapping himself in the real world. So he would go from one room to another, and then he wouldn't know, he would get lost. He would literally go from the kitchen to the lounge and think, oh gosh, how do I get back again? He was clearly lost. So strange things like that. His speech was gone, I can tell you how he regained his speech, but so he was singing. He was humming, so he started humming things. And now I didn't know this at the time, but later I found out that there's a therapy called melodic intonation therapy, which uses exactly the same principles. So for him, he was humming. So he would say, he was saying, "A-D-U-R, A-D-U-R." So and then one day he was just making that sort of, he said it very many times, and then he just said, "A-D-U-R, A-D, A-D," and his name is Eddie. So he said, "A-D, A-D," and then I keep crying. And then he said, he was thrilled, and I was so pleased because he'd sort of said his first word again, and he suddenly had stopped that. So melodic intonation therapy works on the same principles. So you're encouraging this area of the brain to be converted from singing to being able to speech. So you're reusing or repurposing a different area of your brain, which has a similar function, and then adapting it to help you to speak. So I believe that's really what happened with him, to be able to speak again, because even now he will get muddled up with words. If he can't hear. I remember my daughter played in an orchestra, and he struggled for a long time to say orchestra. It's got 3 syllables in it, so he would say chess, and it was it was all the wrong way round. So, and then eventually, very slowly, lots and lots of practice, he was able to say orchestra. But it's a slow process. And you said about neuroplasticity earlier. So neuroplasticity is one. I think it's useful to make the distinction between neuroplasticity and neuroplasticity therapies, and because I think that's really important for our discussion. So neuroplasticity is just the ability to learn, really, and it also refers to the sort of the mechanics of what's actually happening in the brain, the process of how that happens. So we are learning all the time, just from this meeting you this morning. I've learnt that where Bournemouth is on the coast. We chatted just before we came on, and I'm slightly north of Bournemouth, but so I know that about you now, John, but I didn't know it before. So some sort of connection has already happened in my brain. So neuroplasticity happens to us all the time, even with information or just finding our way around things. It's novel experiences will create that, and there's some other principles. We might lose something as well, filter it out, or just lose bits of information. So that's just the learning side of it, and that's how it just generally happens. So neuroplasticity therapies are different because they want to target We're deliberately stimulating or sometimes inhibiting, so not stimulating, stopping any stimulation too, but normally stimulating a specific area of the brain. So and so that's with reason that we do that, because we will have done some sort of evaluation, and then we'll know that these or that particular area of the brain seems to be weak or dysfunctional in some way. It might be over stimulated for some people, so you might want to reduce it, but we'll stick with weak ones for now. So if it's an area of the brain which is weak or dysfunctional, then you want to stimulate that more, and sometimes in certain ways, to encourage the brain to recognize, oh, that's there, and that's a much more efficient pathway. And if I use that, then I can, life becomes easier. So you're helping it, but you've got to stimulate that area of the brain for it to be activated. So
wow.
I think.
And is it just for? It's not just for brain injuries either, is it? Or it's for anything? It could be. Could it be for things like childhood traumas, or ADHD seems to be quite popular now or growing? So, can you use neuroplasticity therapies for alternative things like that, like mental health things?
So if we just focus on one, you started with childhood trauma. So it's like a sequence of events with something like that. So if there have been some trauma in somebody's childhood, there's two sides to it. That there's an experience that they need to deal with, but if it's caused having a trauma like the ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, they've shown that interruptions to child normal development will affect normal development. So you've interrupted things by something stressed. So if you're at any point, if you're in survival mode, you'll need to turn to focus on that rather than just getting on with the normal, this is what my next milestone that I'm going to hit as a child. So it will definitely impact. And it may be, the Neuro Frontiers logo is supposed to have some rungs on it like a ladder, because thinking of the brain developing in terms of a ladder is really important. But our brains are absolutely fantastic. If we have a half broken rung at the bottom, oh well, it's half broken, but I can still get onto the next one. Oh, that's all right. And then you might miss out a milestone. So typically, not typically, but commonly you might find people who have autistic type symptoms, they may have missed out a stage of crawling. So that will, but they managed to get by after that. Oh well, so that's okay. But at some point, that is like a foundational rung of your ladder. It will make a difference, and because in the brain things are rested upon. They rest upon these foundational layers, and at some point, the weight of resting on that, it's just too much to deal with, and something will fail, and you will. And it may be that you missed out crawling when you were, or you sped through it, or when you were very young, but that doesn't show up as an issue until maybe you're 18, you're going off to university, and suddenly you've got to cope with lots of things. So the pressure could be from academic work, you're having to really try hard with that. You need to suddenly have independent living, you've got some new friends that you've got to make because none of your old friends are there, so your social skills are being tested. Too many skills all at once being tested, and you've got to be organized domestically, do your own laundry and so on. So lots and lots and lots. Or if you're a boy, not okay, maybe you didn't, just bring it home to your mum.
James missed that step. James is a few steps.
Stereotypical, Gemma.
I can see you both look confused at that point, so I know.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like
James is a few steps.
No, hole in the middle. No. Okay. So too much pressure at 18 can suddenly, I can't cope.
Yeah.
And that you may still need to revisit some of the things which happened, or physical milestones, because these are the things that our higher level abilities rest upon. So
James, you're a few steps short of a ladder, aren't you? You've been like that, right?
On the scale of evolution, I'm very advanced. I'm missing a few runs.
A straight pole.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks.
Yeah, but it's fascinating. I just wanted to know, does your brain set at a certain age? Is it harder to change your brain when you're an adult, Gemma, or is it a benefit that, you know, if you have these problems as a child, that your brain's still developing? There's a lot of scope for improvement rather than being, you know, an adult whose synapses are all sort of set.
So that's a really good question. So it can be slightly harder for an adult, but this is why you need to, if you have an evaluation, then you can deliberately stimulate, and you can go back in terms of development, or there might be a different reason. Something's happened to you in later life, and you just feel that, you know, through the aging process, things can get weak. So you do need to deliberately stimulate things as an adult, because that's when it is a bit, in a way it's a bit harder, but if you make an effort. So even if you think of something like longevity and, you know, going into your older years, if you think of the brain as like a house, and there are rooms in your house. So if you don't go into those rooms, they'll get dusty. And then when things get dusty in the brain, there's a principle called use it or lose it. So if you're not using something, the brain is our laziest organ in many ways, even though it's very active, but it loves to be lazy. It loves to be efficient. So if there's pathways that aren't being used, it's not going to waste energy maintaining those. You know, so I was just going to say, well, we'll just strip those out so that we don't have to maintain those. That's great. We'll just keep on doing what we've always, you know, our core things. That, you know, I'll just get up, make my breakfast, watch some TV, you know, ring my child, watch some more TV and go to bed. You know, maybe it's that. Maybe, you know, I'm just thinking of a worst case older lifestyle. So, you know, it's not very stimulating. But if you are thinking of the rooms in your brain, and you need to dust them frequently, so you might, you know, oh well, shall I go and novelty is a great way to dust out these rooms. So you might, you know, things like University of the Third Age, or you joining community groups. So not testing out, but using your social skills, keeping those alive and well. You're dusting that area of your brain. Yeah. You could be learning a new skill like dance or board games. You could just go and have new experiences, go and visit new places, or go and visit some place you've not been to for ages and see what the difference is. So it's about novelty. And if you've read anything along or about blue zones, they're a great reminder of all the ways we can keep these areas of our brain dusted. Yeah, and having a purpose, a reason to get up every morning.
Yeah. So there's hope. There's hope for James.
We've talked about. Well, this is something we've talked about a lot in previous conversations. It is that purpose, that sort of drive, isn't it? And I think there needs to be that kind of element there to get up in the morning and think, well, what is the point? And if you're asking that sort of question, then it's like, well, what can we do to sort of revisit the things that we used to find interesting? So I guess that kind of ties into, doesn't it, opening those rooms in that house. But what would you suggest would be a really kind of easy way to do that on a daily basis? Because I think for some people, maybe it feel a bit overwhelming, that it's something that they don't necessarily feel they can do with everything else that's going on. And how would you identify the rooms that you haven't necessarily been in for a while, that you could then sort of say, well, that's the area that I need to address a little bit more?
I'm just going to unpick your question a bit. So you said for some people this feels overwhelming. So if you've got an overwhelming lifestyle, probably the chances are that you're already, you know, having lots of novelty coming into your life. Brain, so you would be using your brain in some ways, but you could do a bit of an inventory and just see, am I using my brain in all the ways I could do? So, am I being physical? You know, am I having social relationships? You know, when I say physical, you know, not having a fight with someone, but learning a new sport or a new skill, or, you know, balancing sort of activities like Qigong or Tai Chi could be really useful. Just
music's
stretching,
a good one, isn't it?
Music,
learning any instrument,
so
music seems to, it's like a never-ending learning process, isn't it? That one. That's, I guess, when people retire, they say that people age very quickly sometimes when they retire. It's probably something to do with that brain activity starts to like rapidly slow down when it's not being used, and then you you age, don't you, quite quickly sometimes, unless you've got a stressful job and you can chill out on a saga cruise. That would be nice.
Yeah.
So in terms of the quantum side, Gemma, I've been learning a lot about like quantum physics and stuff recently. Is there any sort of quantum data or anything that you're interested in on that side when it comes to like brain activity and belief systems? And, you know, is the moon really there, or is it just only there when you look at
it? Wow. I did philosophy as my first degree, so I probably should be able to talk about this, but no. Do you mean sort of like unanswered or mysteries that still exist? Is that what you're referring
just in
to?
terms of like a belief, just in a Joe Dispenza stuff, it's more about what you sort of viscerally believe. If there's like a higher intention and a vibration in the whatever it is quantum field, then you sort of attract in certain energies or healing in that realm. It's all very weird and quantum. But I don't know, the brain, we've got a guy coming on who builds quantum computers, and he's trying to deal with figuring out what consciousness is and see if you can build it into a computer. I was wondering if there's anything across those lines in neuroplasticity, because I guess there will be quite a lot of quantum elements to it, or is that something maybe to look at in the future?
I'm sure that I'll admit I'm not really sure of the question, and so it's not. But I'll in terms of sort of consciousness and things, there are questions which are, neuroscience is a fascinating field. It's about ourselves, isn't it? So we are always, most people are interested in what's happening with themselves. And you mentioned Joe Dispenza, so. Neuroplasticity therapies are science informed, and it doesn't rely on a belief at all. You don't have to go to ethereal realms to be able to use these at all. It's not a therapy like that. It's a very much science informed therapy. So it's robust, and that's, as a parent, that's what I was really very important to me. I wasted a lot of time, energy, effort, resources, finances, trying. I was so desperate, and that's, I meet a lot of not just parents, individuals, and people who care for other people, and that's what they've done. They've spent a lot of effort and time trying out things and not really knowing, is this the best thing I could be doing? What else is out there? Or they're overwhelmed and they can't decide because there's too many things. The minute you turn your back on conventional things, and then you look on the internet and it said, 4 million hits. That's going to take a lifetime just to read through all the possible choices. And then some of those turn out to be, happy, clappy, woo woo, which is very, very much away from what, I work with and my colleagues work with. It's very much science-based, and then you've got a lot more. You don't have to have faith, because you can look at the literature, you can see it before your own eyes. You feel that this is going to work because it's logical why it will work. I do A and B should happen, and that's. And if it doesn't happen, then you're like, oh right, did I misinterpret the evaluation? And then you go back, and you're using, there's a methodology to it. It is back to your science days.
It's
equipment, method, results.
Yeah, I think that was one of his books. I know, James, you've read it, Placebo Effect. It was quite an interesting one on that. It's like
and he's done meditations around it as well. In terms of that kind of ability to be able to change outcomes, it's not set in stone, that you can actually create a new set of these kind of neural links that lead you down a different path, that it doesn't have to be set that what you think you believe an outcome is, or a different outcome is absolutely possible. But Gemma, I just wanted to kind of go back almost to the origin story again, because I know we had a conversation, didn't we, a little while ago, and you were telling me about you created these businesses, you had a marathon in, was it Newcastle, Manchester?
Manchester Marathon, yeah.
So Manchester Marathon, that was it. And I'm just fascinated in terms of your kind of ability to keep going with this in really kind of challenging circumstances, that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that you had to do all those sort of things in almost a kind of a previous life, and creating something out of nothing, that sort of drive to see something through and achieve it. I mean, obviously coupled with the fact there's, the fact you're a mother, this is your child, but it makes me think that maybe somebody else might have given up at some point and thought that things were just weighted against them, that the system wasn't there. The fact you had to go abroad to find the solutions, but you were, tenacious. You had that dogmatic approach to actually finding out a way forward that possibly somebody else may have not been able to do. Do you think there was something kind of innate in you, that this is just part of your makeup, that you're able to see this through to some form of kind of outcome that you weren't prepared to give up? Can you kind of speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I suppose I'm I don't know, maybe it's some sort of scientist in me, that I want to check that what someone's telling me is true. Maybe there's a controlling aspect of me. So, is it true that I just keep my fingers crossed and wait for my son to get better and see what happens? Or, is that really the best I can do? And it came, and it's the same with lots of people that I work with. They're in a very desperate position. A lot of people, if you've got something severe, and so they really, you'll do anything to change that, because that life is so imprisoning. Imagine, say from my own experience, you can go to a playground, and then you haven't spoken to an adult for 4 days. You haven't seen another grown up, so you get very excited that you finally got your child into something. Miracles happen. They're in the car, and you're going to a playground, and then for whatever reason they might have a seizure then, or later on he might refuse, his anxiety's got too much, and so you can't get out the car. You can see some adults that you could possibly have a conversation with, and you can't go and talk to them. They won't come to you because they don't know what you're, it's just heartbreaking. And it's so through something challenging like that, you have to find an answer. You can't, the alternative of being in that, staying trapped like that is so hard. And you're not going to be the best parent you can be if you're feeling deflated, constantly day after day, like that. So for me, it was two-pronged. I wanted to find some answers, but I also feel I wanted to find a silver lining to this, because that's the only way I can make sense of it. There must be a silver lining, some way that I could give something back to society at large, or to as a result of this. Why would I have to suffer such hardship if there wasn't a silver lining? So and you're right, I did have a very successful business before all of this happened. And again, amazing coincidences happened, so very challenging things. If people are in the UK, things which happened to me all at the same time was that we were our business wasn't for sale. My son was very ill and needing to be rehabilitated. Our business wasn't for sale, and we had some incredible offers from around the world to buy us. 5 really incredible offers from people who definitely have heard of. And eventually we sold to the company behind Tour de France. So, and then the government in the UK said, oh, your house is going to be compulsorily purchased for high-speed rail link. It was a beautiful, like 300-year-old house. But it's just going to be knocked down for a rail link. So I was getting divorced, sadly, at the same time. So all of these things were showing me that a shift was necessary, and it was huge going through all of these things at once. But I was being directed in a new direction. That business was ceasing. I was going to move, and had to find a silver lining for my son. So I just wanted to be the best I could for him. And then once he was enabled to be his best and continue on that pathway, then I thought, I've got all this knowledge in my head. I just felt, even now I feel goosebumps. I feel a big sense of purpose in setting up Neuro Frontiers, in doing this work. And over the next few months, we're rolling out something bigger for people to provide more information. I tried to do the best I could on my website, but I know that something better is going to be available for people so that they can be more informed about all the choice of therapies that are out there. So, we're excited about the new phase of our business, and if anyone's interested on the website, they can sign up for our wait list to be told when all of this is coming out. So just want to raise awareness, and even I've set myself a target of reaching 2 million people with this knowledge. So that's my driver at the minute. I've tried to find a way to measure it and to reach people, because this is so empowering and powerful to be able to change. You're not saving lives, but you're saving quality of life. And if people could have totally. That, if they can 100%. Access a new room, a room that they've never accessed before in their life, if you're not very good at making friendships, suddenly helping them to be able to access that room and, oh wow, I can talk to people, and I don't understand why that was such a big effort before, then it's just so empowering and powerful and quality of life changing, and the ripple effect of that for the family is amazing. Yeah,
and sorry to interrupt, Gemma, but you saying that, but there's only one of you, so how can we impact millions of people? If so is there kind of resources that people can go and find courses to do? The way in which we can kind of self-help, is that something that's there?
Yeah, so you would join Neuro Frontiers, and you'll have an access to a wealth of over 50 experts, and being guided. So I have sort of a methodology for how I work with people, and that includes a sort of signposting service. So I assess a case, and then I think, it's likely that they will need X, Y, or Z, and these are the therapies, and this is the order of them. Because some people come to me and they say, oh, I've tried that therapy. Oh yeah, but you tried it in the wrong order, which is again a waste of resources. So people, even if they get their head around that, oh wow, I can try these therapies, and then they try everything all at once or in the wrong order, it's not going to be their most efficient pathway. So the methodology is that you have a roadmap, so you'll know where you should, this is where I am now, this is where I should be heading, and then these are the stop-offs on the way. These are the therapies which are likely to help me, and the order in which I should take them in order that I can climb that mountain, get to the top, and be the best I can be. So I'm working one-to-one with people. I can get that on a very narrow pathway, but being able to offer this through courses and information online, at least I can get people onto a sort of a motorway, or if you're American, a highway or an autobahn. I don't know, So it's a bit wider, but you will still be heading from A to B. And as you complete your pathway, you're stopping off when interacting with experts in their field. You will understand much more about your own brain, and you will be making these are, once you get to milestone 1, you'll get and now understand where I should be for milestone 2, and so on. So it just makes sense. Your journey will start to make sense, and the order of it. So, that's where we're at.
Where do you see it going, Gemma? Have you got a vision for the next 10 years? Do you think it could be an NHS or some type of educational curriculum within schools to do something along those lines?
Oh, I bet. Honestly, that would be my dream. It's taken me considerable time and financial input. And again, selling a business, I've thought, gosh, what a blessing. I'm suddenly free now to be able to do the learning that I want to anywhere in the world. It's such a blessing. And again, that sort of added to my internal narrative that, I'm on a path for a reason. So, in terms of where it's going and my vision, I would love to see some changes in the NHS or to set up, some course which umbrellaed all these incredible, amazing therapies. And, in education, in 2022, we ran a summit on the role of neuroscience in education. We had 1,200 people attend that. And there's huge... The system could be so different, and some of the learning from that summit would even be useful in the workplace. So, for example, just stretching. So we've all had that annoying person in the office who, just a big stretch. But actually, that's really good for you. So if you feel that you should not restrict yourself from doing a big stretch on your chair or, getting up and doing a bit of stretching, we all know that person in the office that does that. But it's really good because our bodies have what's called a bidirectional communication between the brain and the body. They're always communicating, and how one is reflects the other. So you're wanting to wake up. You want your brain to wake up. Yawning is the same. Yawning can be seen as a compliment because you are Andrew Gallup from SUNY University in New York. He found that it's not about getting extra air in. It's about opening up your neck area, so you're letting extra and cooled down blood come into this. You're improving circulation by yawning, circulation to your brain. So it's an actual compliment. People want to stay awake and they want their brain to be really alert. That's why they yawn. So it's not rude. It's a compliment. So
every time I yawn at you, John, it's not because I'm bored.
Yeah, okay, James.
I'll
believe you.
I'm incredibly. I'm just freeing up neurons to deal with you, I guess.
And what about how? I don't know if I dare ask you to this question, but I will dare.
Go for it, Gemma. Go for it.
What do your working environments smell like?
Oh God, I'll have to ask my wife.
So, and that's a change we can all make. Is to have what sort of mood, but also if you're doing a day of learning and you want to be really, then you want smells like rosemary. So there's lots of evidence that rosemary is a really potent smell for helping your brain to learn better. It actually changes, things. It releases acetylcholine, so it's rosemary is a lovely scent, and you've probably got a rosemary bush in your garden. Just rub some on your hands if you've got that, or put some in a diffuser. Your working environment, think, you've probably got a brand. What would your brand smell like? You can set an atmosphere, and you can set, you can help to influence. Musk.
Old Spice, we would be, James, wouldn't
we? You'd be Old Spice.
Old Spice, that's what we like.
Yeah.
But Gemma, going back to the heading on there, we put inventor. Could you tell us more about the invention?
I can.
That's a good thing to say in a bar, isn't it? Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm just an inventor. It's quite cool, isn't it?
Right, I am quite a solutions-focused person. So, my son when he was having 500 seizures a week. Any spare time, so he would have a seizure and then he would go to sleep for an hour or so, and I was generally next to him. So I started just researching, what could stop seizures, and then eventually I I am the inventor of the exchange breathing method, which is a method to stop seizures. It's a first aid method. So I had read thousands of papers online and suddenly just put some things together. I did interact with other people in a Facebook group that I set up online, and they were influential in, directing me. But eventually the exchange breathing method happened, and that was, so if somebody's having a seizure, the first thing you could try check with their neurologist first if you're the carer for them, and just make sure. To date, no neurologist has said don't try this, but there's always a first time. So you would get your mouth and form a seal over their nose and just give them a breath out. So this your outward breath is full of carbon dioxide. There's various reasons and why this is likely to work. But breathing into somebody's nose, which is your breathing apparatus, this is for eating, this is for breathing or talking, breathing. But we've got about 3,000 people across the world now using the exchange breathing method, and every week I get letters and notes from people very grateful to have heard about it, that it doesn't stop the seizure happening in the first place, but it can be absolutely life-changing for people. So I had one of the best letters I had was from a mother who'd been queuing up outside a theatre with her son, and then the son started to have a seizure. Now, normally this would just ruin the entire family day, and you've got a big event that you want your whole family to go to. And then, so she did the exchange breathing method. Her son would normally take, it would either be an ambulance next, or, a period of a few hours of sleep. Definitely the day's ruined. But she did the exchange breathing method with him, and he was just normal. Went into the theatre, saw that it's just, it's quite, yeah.
Did he have epilepsy? Was it epileptic seizure? Yeah.
And I think Patrick McEwen has adopted it, isn't it? The Oxygen Vantage guy. I think he's a lovely man.
Yes, I was really lucky to meet him last April, and in fact, I just had a patient who told me that he came to me because he had heard about me through Patrick. So if Patrick's listening to this, thank you very much for all the referrals Patrick. You keep giving me. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's insane, isn't it? That you can do something like, I was a lifeguard back in the day, and people used to have epileptic fits in the water, and then you're bringing them out, but the whole thing was to pinch their nose and then breathe through the mouth. So it's yours is the opposite though, which is
it related, Gemma? So when a child or a baby has sort of wind blown in the face, they kind of taking a sort of a deep breath. Is there any kind of relation to that, where that's sort of almost an autonomic response?
Yeah, so that's a reflex, and that's associated with your startle reflex. So if I was to make a big, bang, it's not very loud at all, but if I was to set something off, we would all go, and that a breath in stimulates the our arousal system within our brain. So that there is a difference between breathing in and breathing out in the states of our brain. So it may be related, and my dream with the exchange breathing method is that it becomes the world's #1 first aid method for seizures. It's worth a try. It's free to it's not much effort, but
easy to administer. Relatively easy to administer, I should imagine. Yeah.
Yes, but I also think there's likely to be other uses for it as well. So we're looking into those things, but it does need to go through again some guidelines before it will be adopted internationally, or even nationally. But if people were to find out about it and use it, there's two ways you have pressure from like research, finding out about it, and then public use of things so they become popular, and then we're forced into using it, and people would say so. It's all the instructions on the website and on YouTube.
It's incredible, isn't it? James, I feel like I'm slightly behind in life here, James. Do you?
It's a lot to learn, mate.
I need to get in the garage. Let's talk about your book, Gemma. What was your book called, and what was it about?
Oh, bless. I am writing another one, which is going to be more work related. But in fact, I'm very grateful to have gone through the experience of writing a poetry book, and So
Wow.
because I did that because, I have a lot of poetry anyway. I like writing poetry. It's called Hold On, Let Go, and it's a range of poetry. Some of it covers being a mother, life with my son. Another poem is all about dementia and the effects of that. So it is slightly work related. The experience of writing it, sitting down and forcing, and I'm grateful to somebody else. His name is Mark Hyde. He's somebody who's a friend, and he encouraged me and said, well, you've always been thinking about this, just sit down and do it. And it's like, oh, okay. So I did. I just said, like you would book a week off, I booked a week in and just worked on it, and got a huge chunk done. So that showed me that I can do this. And so then I've got other things I would like to then go on and publish with my work hat on, which require a bit more scientific input, but the experience is great. It's really good. If anyone's thinking of writing a book, do it. Yeah.
Do you know any off by heart, Gemma? I want to put you on the spot, but any poems?
You want me to read one? I can go and get it. It's got. Yeah. I can read one if you want.
Oh, yeah, fabulous!
Let's grab a.
Oh, the beauty of live.
Well, I'm inspired now, James. I need to write a book, create an invention, sell a business.
Yep. I think everybody's got a book in them, but just sitting down and read and writing it is a different matter. But...
And then James will sing a song after this.
Yeah, you get your guitar out, mate. We'll sing a song.
Yes, please get something a bit cheery. I've got it's a sad one about dementia, but I'm just thinking of the length.
Ready
of it.
with your guitar, John?
Have you had experience with this, Gemma? Dementia? Is this do you know somebody who's had dementia?
An uncle has, and and various people I've worked with. So it's called Thawed Thoughts, as in an ice thaw, thawing out. It started as a tiny drop, rolling down the word forgot. The world has fallen upside down. The ice maiden has lost her crown. Her lofty highs are now aflow. Sun-fractured dreams slip below. Cold splinters of a precious past turned to slush. It went so fast. Water pooling in her eyes, blurring all she sees inside. Clutching at the shrinking pieces, but warm hands melt and form decreases. Fragments of some other times, mismatched in her leaking mind. Thawing memories looking back, oblivious to spring's attack. Hopeful breakthroughs soon diminish, ice-white matter, a watery finish. Her essence now is all that's left, pretty in a summer dress. Winter just a distant memory, season closed, vessel empty. Sorry.
Beautiful.
Very
good. Yeah. James?
I'm feeling creative now. I have been in the past known to write a little bit.
Yeah, James is an artist, aren't you?
But I've neglected it of late, so everybody keeps telling me I've got to get back to doing that.
How long did that take you, Gemma, to write the book and publish it? Did you self-publish?
I did a hybrid publishing, so it was you had to. It was a little bit of a competition, and then they would chose a certain number of people to go forward. So I did it with a hybrid publisher. So that's where you get the royalties, but but you pay them a bit to do the work in the first place. So it's a hand holding service.
And your next book is going to be about? What's the next one?
The next one's
another poetry.
No, it's about neuroplasticity therapies. That's the next one.
When's that going to be released? Next year?
Putting me under pressure. Go on, set me a deadline then. When should I release it?
It's got to be summer 2026.
Summer 2026. All right. Okay, brilliant. I'll do it by then.
Is that realistic?
Yeah, I've got mountains of notes, and yeah.
You could get it done, couldn't you?
You heard it here first, everybody, but hold you accountable for that. So on that note, Gemma, is there anything that we can help you with? Is there any request of anybody watching, or anything that we can do in terms of spreading the word and getting the message out?
Well, I'm just very grateful that you both invited me onto this. So thank you ever so much. And, you know, if people want to get in contact, we're at neurofrontiers.org. And then you can join our wait list from there for our new venture. That would be a great start. And then obviously the exchange breathing method is online. And if people got any questions or want to support that in any way at all, please get in contact. That will be really good.
Brilliant.
So thank you.
No, thanks for coming on, Gemma. Absolutely amazing. Great story. And I'm going to check out the Neuro Frontiers as well. So, and we'll catch up again soon in the future. So don't disappear, Gemma. When we come off of this live, we'll go into the there'll be a green room.
Green room.
But you'll disappear at first, and then we'll bring you back. Okay?
Before I go, I think you two deserve a big. You should be very proud of yourselves, both of you, because you're trying something very new here, and it's not so new now. You're getting really into it, but you are doing something good. It is entertaining and informative, and connecting as well. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Gemma. Thanks, you.
Gemma.
And last
make me cry now.
Meeting, Louise. So fabulous. We've got Lucy. Yes, Gemma. When's the deadline? Lucy Mancy. Lucy's waiting.
Yeah, winky smiley face.
Lucy works with me.
But this is live now. You can't go back on it. It's summer next year.
Thanks for sharing. So thank you for everybody for watching. And if you've got questions, just put them in the question section of LinkedIn or YouTube. And then I'm sure James and I and Gemma will be in there to answer them for you. So take care, guys. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Much love.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye-bye.